From ABC News, This Week with George Stephanopoulos. It's your voice, your vote. Reporting from the Newseum in Washington, Jake Tapper.
Good morning, everyone. George Stephanopoulos has a well-deserved morning off. We're exactly 6 months from Election Day, and in case you had any doubt, the presidential campaign is now officially in full swing, with President Obama holding his first two re-election rallies yesterday in the critical battleground states of Ohio and Virginia. The president was a wee bit rusty at first, nearly forgetting his wife Michelle as he walked off Air Force One in Columbus. Oh, there she is. And after that, the First Lady introduced him at Ohio State.
We just cannot turn back now, right? We have come so far, but we have so much more to do.
And then the president stepped up and made his pitch.
If people ask you what this campaign is about, you tell them it's still about hope. You tell them it's still about change.
And let's now bring in the president's chief campaign strategist, David Axelrod. David, thanks for joining us.
Sure. Good to be with you, Jake.
The president kicked off his campaign in Columbus, Ohio, and Richmond, Virginia. And here are the headlines in the newspapers that greeted him, which were reporting on Friday's jobs report. The Columbus Dispatch, job numbers don't mirror hope. The Richmond Times-Dispatch, April job growth slight, portion of Americans in labor force falls to lowest level since 1981. The headlines say it all, don't they? The economy just isn't strong enough, and what the president has been able to accomplish has not been enough.
Well, Jake, let's consider where we were when the president took office. We were losing 800,000 jobs in 1 month. We lost 4 million in the 6 months before he took office, or nearly 4 million. In the last 26 months, we've gained 4.2 million private sector jobs. The last 6 months, we've gained nearly 200,000 jobs a month. And you have to look at the trend, not 1 month or short periods of time. Now, we have a lot of headwinds. The president said yesterday we have to be vigilant. We have to be persistent. We've got headwinds from Europe and the Middle East and so on. But we have to push forward, and Congress can help. The president has offered a series of ideas on small business tax cuts, real small business tax cuts, on helping people refinance their mortgages, take advantage of low interest rates, on getting a surface transportation bill done. All of these will help our economy move forward, but what we can't do is go back to doing what we were doing before the crisis, because that'll result in the same disastrous outcome for our economy and the middle class.
And David, when the president gave his speech yesterday, he acknowledged that people are still hurting. Let's take a listen.
The real question, the question that will actually make a difference in your life and in the lives of your children, is not just about how we're doing today. It's about how we'll be doing tomorrow.
David, it seems as though the president is acknowledging that he cannot win on the premise, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Doesn't that in itself suggest failure?
No. As I said, Jake, we've come a long way from where we were. We're in the middle of recovering from this recession, but there's a larger project, which is how do we rebuild this economy in the long term so the middle class is growing and not shrinking, and people who work hard can get ahead. People who act responsibly are rewarded for that responsibility. That's what we're working on, and what we can't do is do what Governor Romney has suggested, which is to go back to the same formula that hurt our economy and hurt so many people. Tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans that we can't afford, cutting Wall Street loose to make its own rules. That is not a prescription for the kind of growth that we need in this country. And by the way, I would note that in 2004, when the recovery from that recession was more laggard than what we have today, Governor Romney ran around this country saying that President Bush ought not to be blamed for that, and it was just politics to blame him for that. I suggest it's just politics when you hear Governor Romney today, and he certainly wants to go back to that same disastrous formula.
One of the issues that you guys are going to be facing, one of the headwinds, is a lack of enthusiasm, or at least less enthusiasm. When I covered you guys, your campaign in 2007, 2008, you and your staff members would excitedly regale us with the huge numbers of crowd estimates. At OSU, at Ohio State yesterday, in a stadium that seats about 18,000, there were roughly 14,000 people there. Now, granted, those 14,000 were very excited. They supported the president, but there were still more than 4,000 empty seats. Doesn't that indicate that there is a problem you're facing when it comes to fewer people who are excited about the president?
Jake, you should have gone along on the whole trip. In Virginia, there was an overflow crowd, and that's the way it is. But the fact is that 14,000 is 11,000 more than the largest crowd that Mitt Romney has ever drawn. So I think there's enthusiasm for the president's candidacy, and we got tremendous volunteer response. Just from that event, we got thousands of more volunteers in our campaign. I am certain that we are going to have an enthused volunteer corps and enthused electorate out there. The thing that we've seen over time is that Republican enthusiasm has dropped precipitously, partly because what we've seen from Governor Romney is all negative. 90% of the ads that he's run in this campaign, $55 million of advertising, 90% of it he and his team have run, have been negative. His attacks, his speeches now are entirely negative, attacks on the president. Doesn't talk about his own record, doesn't really talk about his vision. That is not going to create enthusiasm. I think what the president's talking about will create enthusiasm, which is how do we build an economy in which the middle class has a shot, everybody gets a fair shake, everybody has some confidence that their kids might do better in the future. That's the project we're working on.
The Republicans say, speaking of records, the Republicans say that based on the OBL ad, the Osama bin Laden ad, and some of the other attacks from the campaign against Mitt Romney, that your campaign, the Obama campaign, is not running on his record. When can we expect to see ads about the president's record run by the Obama campaign?
Well, first of all, we're certainly running on our record. You could hear it in the president's speech yesterday, on our record and our vision and our ideas for the future. The Osama bin Laden mission was certainly part of the president's record, and we are talking about that. And in this coming week, you'll see us unveil an advertising campaign, an extensive advertising campaign that is very much about where we were and where we've come and the things that we've accomplished, the revitalization of the auto industry, the distance we've traveled from when we were losing 800,000 jobs a month, the fact that we're safer today because bin Laden is gone, that the war in Iraq is over, and many other things that we're proud of and that speak to the progress that we've made since this president was elected.
There's been a lot of back and forth in the last week about whether or not President Obama was spiking the football when it came to the mission in which Osama bin Laden was killed. Here is an ad from a group called Veterans for a Strong America that I want to play for you.
I said that I'd go after bin Laden if we had a clear shot at him. And I did. And I did. And I did. And I did.
David, do you ever worry that in the president's eagerness to remind voters of the successful mission that he may come across as self-serving?
Well, first of all, the president hasn't been spiking the ball. This was the one-year anniversary. It's part of his record, and it's certainly a legitimate part of his record to talk about. Look, the president in the last campaign said that he would go wherever he had to hit high-value al-Qaeda targets, including Osama bin Laden. One of the first things he did when he got here into the presidency was order the CIA to make this a top priority. That's one of the reasons. That's the main reason why we were able to be in a position to find bin Laden. And then he ordered a mission that was frankly risky, dangerous. Bob Gates said it was one of the most courageous, one of the gutsiest decisions he's ever seen a president make, and it turned out successfully. And let me tell you something, Jake, if it hadn't, you better believe the other side would be talking about it, and Mitt Romney would be the first one. So let's set that aside. That's politics, man.
Speaking of Mitt Romney, lastly, I want to talk to you about this Chinese dissident, Chen Guangcheng, who sought refuge at the U.S. Embassy in China. We played a little clip of Mitt Romney earlier criticizing the president, saying if the reports were true, it's a dark day for freedom and it's a day of shame for the Obama administration. Do you have any response to the criticism from Mitt Romney about the administration's handling of this issue?
Listen, I think what's shameful is when presidential candidates are so craven to score political points that they speak irresponsibly on half information at a time when the president is trying and the administration is trying to resolve a situation that is very, very sensitive and very difficult. We want to help Mr. Chen achieve his goal, which is to come here, and we want to do it in accordance with our values, and we want to be successful in doing that, and we're making some progress in that regard. But it doesn't help to have candidates blunderbussing around trying to score political points when we're in the middle of that process.
All right, David Axelrod, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Have a good
All right,
Sunday.
good to be with you, Jake.